Rutherford Issues with Bryan Barrett on FM 101.9 and AM 1450 Murfreesboro, FM 100.5 Smyrna. Listen and watch at WGNSradio.com.
Rutherford Issues is powered by Middle Tennessee Electric. MTE has delivered reliable service and peace of mind for nearly 90 years. Manage your account at MTE.com or download the My MTE app. Well, speaking of nearly 90 years, State Representative Mike Sparks joins me here today.
Been a long time.
You look like 90.
Yeah, been getting old, having these grandbabies, man.
So you're putting a big G sticker on a disposable body armored hyper drink. Huh?
The reason I done that, I like that bottle, and I've saved that bottle. So that way I knew it's mine.
I see.
You like that?
I
it's marketing.
I think, yeah.
I've had it for like 3 weeks.
Very cheap of you.
You know where I got that? Coca-Cola, where I used to work at, did an event in Smyrna and Laverne, fed all the EMS workers, police and fire. And
was that during EMS week a few weeks ago?
I guess that's what it was. But anyways, they wanted me to come out and Laverne multi-use building, and gave out a lot of door prizes to the police and firemen and drinks and gave out a couple of shirts, and I grabbed that and grabbed a shirt, and I grabbed this hat. You like that hat?
Mm-hmm. You're always for free stuff, aren't you?
I'm there, brother. I'm there.
Are you going to be working on legislation to make the official state iced drink be the icy, since they're in Laverne now?
That's a dang good idea. Where'd you come up with that?
I just thought of it.
Man, I like that.
Yeah.
Well, I might. I mean, if folks started calling the office, I just don't want to do it because, it's Bryan Barrett's idea. I want to do it because it's...
Well, no, I'm just saying that'd be a good highlight for that business.
That is cool. Well, we did a tour over a couple of years ago. In fact, they have an icy Jack Daniels, and what's the other one? I don't drink, so I don't follow the stuff. What's the other one? The guy standing up there with the boot with the pirate, Captain something.
Morgan?
Yeah.
Rum?
Yeah, okay. Anyways, I grabbed a couple ices, and I had an extra one, and I got it out of that machine. The other machine's busy, and I had two of them, and I had one, and Bill Ketchum was there, and Bill goes, "What are you gonna do with that other icy?" I said, "Well, I'm gonna take it to my wife." So figured I'd take it. He goes, "Man, that thing's gonna melt by the time you get to your business." And I thought, okay, there was this kid standing there. I probably shouldn't share this on the radio, but it was a friend of mine's son, Kelly Butler's nephew, Stephanie, Tolleson now. Son, I said, "You want this icy?" He goes, "Yeah." And the guy with me was like, "Hey, man, that came out of that machine?" I said, "No, that's just icy, man. It's just Coca-Cola." He goes, No, it had alcohol. I said, "No, it didn't. They ain't going to be doing alcohol out there." And even Bill Kitchen was like, "What are you thinking?" I was like, "Man, that's just regular icy. It's not alcohol." And I was kind of worried about it, to be honest with you. But anyways, that was our experience with icy. We've been over a few times. The Speaker of the House came in last year. And
wow.
Vice Mayor No, and I think Mayor Cole and Representative Stevens. They got a nice operation. But the good thing about that is they left California to come here, move those jobs and move those headquarters. And, Laverne's an economic machine, man, as well as Smyrna.
Well, I was just going to part of that and just glossing over the fact that you gave a child an alcoholic icy. But
don't make that a news story, okay?
It's already out there. I
guarantee somebody out there would be like, "I got something on it for next election,"
There are some people that are a bit worried about Bridgestone though closing. So, well,
those jobs got picked up. Some of them, not all of them. I brought it up to ECD director. His name's on the top of my edge of my tongue. Can't think of it. But I brought it up in finance when they did their budget. But some of those jobs moved to McMinnville. That plant, you got to remember, that plant's 50-something years old. And they are looking aggressively for someone to hopefully kind of fill that spot.
So most of those jobs?
No, I don't want to say most of them.
Okay.
But a lot of those folks are retiring out. I think it's 350, 320 that got moved to McMinnville. That's what I'm told. So, they're, I guess, learn to be more efficient and doing more with less. And sometimes automation will eliminate some labor cost, and it's where things are kind of going. I mean, whether it's AI or Nissan or other efficiencies, you're seeing some of that, And
Elon Musk says by 2040 there will be 10 to 12 million humanoid robots.
Wow. That's wild.
That can do, like mowing the yard, cleaning the house, but also probably a lot of these manufacturing jobs.
I was at a conference it was MTSU last year, and it was an AI conference. It was one of my professors invited me, Professor Todd O'Neill, great guy. And when it looks at the music industry and some of those areas, man, that and I had read or heard, maybe it was Elon that mentioned movies, they wouldn't even need actors because all this would be AI.
Yeah.
But what the guy said that I thought was interesting, he said it's the folks that know AI who will be replacing much of those jobs. But like Bob Dylan said, the times they are a changing, and they certainly are. Sometimes for the good, sometimes for the worse.
So I guess you've been done with session a month, maybe?
Yep. Glad. It's stressful up there, man. Guess you've seen I got mad at my own party, or got mad at the entire General Assembly on what I call the ugly bill. It kind of went viral. But it's an ugly bill. The General Assembly raised interest rates to help these loan sharks. And I know there's people that's going to be upset at me talking about it live on the radio, but it's sad. And I went to the governor, asked him to veto the legislation, and he looked at me really just shocked. He said, "Why does this matter?" I said, "The next generation, our grandchildren." You just show me how many pictures you show me your grandbaby.
Well, there are 109 in the album right now.
But when you have grandkids, I think you look at life from a little different lens, change your paradigm. And I even heard John DeBerry say that. And I think grandkids do make you look at life, look at the next generation. I was talking to Dr. Krause about affordable housing, and he has a heart for students. He was one of my professors a few years back. And I told the governor, I said, "Governor, this next generation, our grandkids are going to suffer from these high interest rate loan sharks, predatory lending. This stuff is so bad." Guido would even say, and I probably shouldn't talk Guido, but Guido would even say, "That's terrible, man." I mean, if you look it up, there's a nice article, I think it was ProPublica, something like that, did an investigative story. 110,000 Tennesseans have been sued by just advance finance. Just one finance company that's making millions, putting their boot on the neck of the middle class and the poor. People have lost their homes. But sadly, Phil Williams is never going to talk about this. You know why Phil's not going to talk about it? They're making money on the deal. They're advertising for these people, so they're not going to cut off a revenue stream. So the mainstream media, 90% of it, which is corporate owned, that's one thing I like about WGNS. You're going to get the truth. You may not like the truth, but you're going to get the raw truth. And the people can read through this stuff, but when 90% of the media is controlled by five huge corporations, it's all about that dollar. It's all about stretching that dollar. They don't care what means it is. They're never going to tell these stories. So ProPublica did tell the story. Some investigative journalists looked at it. This issue, right now, people aren't paying attention to it. I promise you, mark my word, in another year or 2, 3, 4, people are going to start questioning what is all this stuff going on. When you got more of these title upon it checking the cash than McDonald's and Burger Kings and Dollar Generals combined, something's wrong, because here's what's going to happen. These people who could have been bankable, and the banking industry needs to care about this, because these people aren't going to be bankable anymore because they're in bondage now. You see what I'm saying? Like indentured servitude. So anyways, I wish pastors would have some backbone and start talking about this, because it's heartbreaking. I even had a guy at church come up to me and said, "Mike, I heard you talk about this." He said, "Man, my mother-in-law borrowed $5,000, and next thing you know, it's $14,000 she owes." And everybody's silent, man.
If Advance came to you and said, "I want to advertise on your website, pay $1,000 a month,"
I'd tell them to kiss my white ASS is what I'd tell them.
Really?
I would. I mean, I know Bart may not like me saying that. I'm spelling the word, but I just think it's sickening. It's sickening. It makes me want to just throw up. people have to start caring about their community, whether it's Dr. King who cared or whether it was Jesus himself. Jesus flipped over some money changer tables, and, I mean, it's just, I think it's time people need to start getting upset. But hell, when I'm the only one that seems to be caring about it, I talk about loneliness of politics. It literally, it's lonely when it's like, what the blank is going on? It's like I'm in some simulation, some matrix.
$5,000 a month.
It don't money
it
ain't, when you have grandkids, it changes your whole. Have you noticed it yet? You're gonna notice it. I guarantee you got listeners like, yep, I got 10 grandkids, I got 2 grandkids. You start thinking about, what is your legacy? What are you leaving? And Proverbs says a wise man leaves an inheritance to his children. It doesn't say you leave an inheritance of debt, you leave an inheritance of mortgage, you leave an inheritance of all these payments. I'm finally debt free. Give God the glory for it. But we need to start caring, and the people need to start rising up on this kind of stuff.
I met a nice young man and his family yesterday. I'm selling my 2005 Toyota Sienna van.
Oh, they're good vans, man.
I know. But I needed a van that has a wheelchair ramp that will allow my, and so her aunt, who passed away a couple of months ago, wanted to make sure that Heather had the chance to get that van. Yeah. And so selling this van is going to allow me to get it. Good. But anyway, this young couple, they've got 3 kids. One was just 3 weeks old, came from Madison to buy the van, and, saying that she works night shift as a nurse and he's an athletic trainer, and, they want to have 4 or 5 kids. And I thought, wow. But they're not in debt.
Oh,
they
really?
Bought this car with cash.
Wow.
Bought their other vehicle with cash.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that they're maybe renting, but I don't know their house situation. No, they have a house. I'm sure they're still paying on that, out of debt, except that. But, the conversation, the long end of the story is, he said, I can understand why people only have 1 child or 2, or maybe they decide they don't want to have children just because of the cost of what it's going to be.
It's sad. I've often talked about my late father, who was, World War II. He was really a hard guy, but he couldn't let go of the military. I remember I bought a house on Weekend Lane over there, a nice 2-story home. Bought it with no money out of pocket, zero money out of pocket. I was proud I had, put this deal together, zero money out of pocket. The house was worth probably another $25,000, $20,000. And my dad didn't speak to me for about 3 or 4 months because he seen me going into debt, thought I was trying to keep up with the Barretts, and the Walkers, And, but we lived there about 4 years. We sold it, made some money, and, moved back into our original home, stayed there for a while, and then we moved back. We moved from there to near my mom, to help take care of them. And, but no, to me, if you can, my dad always said pay cash if you can. But I think this next generation, they want all the bells and whistles. They want everything now. And I hear it from my wife, because she's, we've got the salon, and she hears it from young people, their house payment and these homes they live in. And, to me, if you could ever change that paradigm in your own mind and be able to shop at Goodwill and be proud that you got a brand new tie with a sticker on, like I did the other day, be comfortable in your own self and be comfortable with really doing more with less. We got to get back to that. I don't know how we change this culture.
When a starter home is no less than 300,000, maybe even 325 or 350.
Where you can find that at, yeah.
How do you afford to do that?
Well, I was talking to Dr. Krause. We had a meeting last week with Tennessee Housing Development Agency, and that 95-year-old that owns the Milky Way Farm, he's wanting me to try to help put something together for affordable housing. I had a meet with Bob Freeman. Bill Freeman, the big developer in Nashville. He sadly passed. We're just kind of brainstorming, and Bob, who's a Democrat representative, we get along good. We're on finance, and he's like, Mike, what do you want to come out of this meeting? What do you want to come out of this? So we had Brenda Bryant, Mr. Jones put the money up for Brenda's house, and then she finally closed it out. But she picked up $170,000 worth of equity because she started leasing it from him years ago. So Mr. Jones is the real deal. So I was telling Krause about it, because Krause has done some similar things, Dr. Krause. And I told Bob, I said, man, we got to identify there's a crisis. There is a crisis. It's not we think there's a crisis. It's a crisis. You know, I bought my first home at 22, which is now our business, is commercial. And I had to sell my old 68 Camaro to buy it. But I had a father, and I was telling this to the governor, I had a father who put the money up for the Camaro, which I paid him back, which was a forced savings account. But I told the governor, if you don't want to veto this, then at least start pushing for financial literacy for these young people to teach them, because once you sign that dotted line and you're stuck with that, and they come with a rollback and pick up your car, that almost happened to that black woman that I made the video about. Folks want to see it, just go to YouTube, type in Miss Helen predatory lending, and repo man was already trying to get her car. She thought she was borrowing money 11%, and it was 11%, all right, 11% a month. And I told that dude, I said, dude, I'm going to cost you 10 grand worth of bad press. I videoed it. I cost him 10 grand worth of bad press. He wanted to be a jerk and not give her title. And she called me crying over to I think it was the next day or 2 days later. And I just left the station here. And she had a special needs sister in her 60s or 70s battling cancer. I said, dude, you realize if you took her car, she'd be homeless? And he had a moment of compassion for like 3 seconds, and they wanted me to keep it down. I said, no, I ain't keeping it. I said, go on and call the police on us. We'll make this real interesting. You know, this is why I'm learning media and stuff, because journalists aren't covering this stuff today. And our forefathers had more backbone than we do today. My dad would be, I mean, there's so much we could get into, girls competing in men's sport or men competing in girls. My dad would have went off on that kind of stuff. So would these other guys that I knew that were in World War II, that were my neighbors and bosses back in the day. But when you lose your car, how you going to find affordable housing? You're stuck. I mean, you got to have a car. How you going to get a car? You don't have no credit. So it's just a cycle, and we need to start realizing this. But Krause, he's a real deal, and so is Dr. or Charles Jones. And Charles remembers going down Jefferson Pike before Seward Air Force Base was even built. Man, that's crazy.
Yeah.
It's like, what? How's that? But anyways, I hope we put something together. And it's hard to find land. I've talked to a few brokers are like, good luck. But if there's any wealthy people listening that want to donate some property for affordable housing, I got you, man, that'll buy it. It was Mr. Charles Jones.
Well, our time's up.
Amen.
Sunday, Conversations with Mike Sparks, 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock, and you'll never hear an Advanced Finance or a Title Max or none of those predatory lenders advertising with me. Thank you, Brian.
All right, man. Appreciate it. State Representative Mike Sparks joining on the show. If you missed part of the show, you can catch the podcast. It'll be up shortly on our website.